And welcome back to another episode of No Buts About It. It is October 3rd. It is a Tuesday. We just had a crazy week 4 here in the NFL. And I'm here to just recap it for you guys. And as always, I am Chus, but I have a new co-host for today because if you haven't watched the last episode or know anything that's going on, Josh is out for the next month or so, so I have to take over the hosting position while he is gone dealing with an eye injury. So during that time, I've decided to throw on multiple different guests to just help me get through because our two other favorite guys that also end up on the show a lot, Alvarado and Stan, have a lot of scheduling conflicts. So sometimes, I just want to have some other guys in here that also have listened to the show and that I know pretty well. And one of them actually ends up being my father. And he has been mentioned a couple of times on the show. He has had some takes. He's also mentioned some things while listening to the show and has mentioned them to me. And I have gone on to mention them to Josh in other shows. And then Josh gets all heated about the Bengals and all this other different topics that my dad has mentioned. And I'm very excited to have him on the show today. So thank you, Dad, or as you guys can call him, Tom. Thank you for coming on the show today. What's going
I
on with
think
you, man?
not much. Thank you for having me, and uh, thanks for covering for Josh. I know Josh really appreciates it, and I'm glad I can help out. And we'll have some football talk here.
Yeah, me and my dad always love to have football talks, even when me and Josh aren't doing talks on No Buts About It. We always in that in between time whenever we both get off of work. So it's always nice to be able to discuss some football and finally be able to use the platform here. So when it comes to football this week, we had a lot of crazy things happen. But first and foremost, since I am a Steelers fan, as many of you know, that would mean my dad is also a Steelers fan. Well, actually,
Yep.
I can't really assume that because some
No, you
parents
can
and
assume that.
sons, but in this case, it can be assumed that me and my dad both share the same love for the Steelers. And man, what a terrible game it was for Pittsburgh Steelers fans and just for the Steelers in general. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people underestimated how good CJ Stroud is. I
Yes.
think he's making some of these wide receivers like Nico Collins and some of these wide receivers I had never really had in any wide receiver discussion all of a sudden just start like making them look good. And then obviously like just destroying the Steelers. And it wasn't even a really good win. It was like I mean it was a good
Well,
win, but like it was a 30-6 win. It was not a good look for the Steelers. And I don't know. What did you think about it? What did you think about it? Because I know
well,
you
I
have a lot
thought
of things you want to say.
I thought our defense was looked tired. I mean, again, we've had 3 games in a row. 2 games we played really well. Um, the it looks like that the Houston had a great offensive plan. I mean, a lot of screens. They were letting them come right at CJ Stroud and just throw the ball right over their head. I mean, they had a lot of great ideas, and they were running the ball. Again, the Steelers are probably the worst team out there right now against the rush in the NFL. I mean, you can't be a dominant defense if you're going to not be able to stop the run. So I think that was a major thing. And then you had the offense doing exactly what the offense has done in the last probably 3 weeks of the season. This is week 4. They're not doing nothing, 3 and out, and then all of a sudden you punt the ball and you give them another chance. It was 16. It was 16 nothing, and it probably could have been easily probably 21, 20, 24 nothing at the half. I mean, our defense kept them from scoring touchdowns, but it was just terrible. It was a bad game, and um, I blame a lot on the offense and defensive coordinators because I think they should have been able to come up with a better game plan. And if they saw what was going on, they should have adjusted. And I don't really know if they ever really adjusted enough to get what they wanted to go on. So
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because obviously Mike Tomlin last week or 2 weeks ago had mentioned that they had elevated Matt Canada in more of like a more hands-on role to be working more with Kenny Pickett, and then obviously we had the Raiders game where there looked to be at least some sort of spark in the offense, but obviously that has also been known to have been a flaw in saying that the offense had a spark because of the Raiders defense not being the greatest defense in the
Yes.
world. So the Steelers were made to look really good on that offense. But when it comes to, going into this week after winning against the Raiders, a lot of Steelers fans, and I know I expected it myself. I expected it to be a good game for the Steelers, but they ended up just falling very, very, very short of my expectations. I mean, Kenny Pickett did not do good. Matt Canada called a 4th and 1 play that was in shotgun formation, which got Kenny Pickett hurt, who is probably not going to play this week against Baltimore, where we're going to end up having super epic Money Mitch for the Pittsburgh Steelers starting at Acrisure Stadium against the Baltimore Ravens. So, and that is just one of many injuries that we will cover throughout this show. But yeah, I mean, so when it comes to the coaching and everything like that, I know that it was just a terrible game. Steelers only put up 6 points. We allowed 30. Not a good look.
No.
Like after coming off of, 2 wins in a row, going up against Houston with CJ Stroud being a rookie quarterback. So obviously there's been a lot of talk with these coaches. And I know that you're very passionate about the different coachings that the Steelers have had over in the past. What do you think of this coaching staff, and what would you do differently?
Well, I think this coaching staff. I mean, even in the defense, I'm not really as impressed with the defensive coordinator as it was in the past. I think he's okay, but I think the secondary is weak. I think we have a weak secondary. I think that I think they went out and tried to get some free agents that they thought were going to help, but a lot of them were older. Patrick Peterson is not the Patrick Peterson of 5, even 10 years ago. They got some young play. They got some young players, but yet they're not ready to play yet. So, and then your secondary, you have some safeties that you thought were going to do well, and they're not. Um, so, um, and I think you can see clearly that Cam Hayward is hurt. With him being hurt, you can see the line just not being able to stop the run. I still think our inside linebackers, which I thought were going to be an improvement this year, is better than what they were last year, but they're nowhere near what they need to be. They're not stopping the run in any way. They're not getting in there to stop those guys from running. I think they need to. I think one of the things, I know it's kind of crazy, but I think I would put in that rookie, Mark, or not rookie, but he's a second year guy, Mark Robinson. I think give him a chance. I mean, you got a young guy in there, give him a chance. Why not? I mean, you have some veteran guys, let him come in there a little bit more. I don't see them doing that. I think sometimes you need to take a chance and bring in some young people to see what you can get. I mean, it can help. I think you go also on the offensive line. I think we had Daniel Moore, I think his name is, or
Yeah, it's something
the
like that.
something like that. Anyway, Moore, he's been the worst offensive tackle in the whole NFL by PFFA
Mm.
grade. So if you have the worst tackle, don't you think you should be doing something about it? And what do? They have a first round draft pick sitting on their bench. They're saying, well, he's not ready. Well, how do you make yourself ready if you don't ever put, the guy in there? So I mean, he's injured this week. So I think that they're going to be bringing in, they'll probably be bringing in him, Broderick Jones now for the starting. You also Fryermuth, as we'll be talking about, but he's injured. So you're going to be using that other Darnell Washington. So you have some people that are coming in that are rookies. You need to bring them in and see how they do. I mean, that's all I can say is because I don't think you should have the worst tackle in the NFL. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to protect your franchise quarterback or run the ball if you have the worst tackles. Um, and again, the other one is Okafor is a little bit better, but he's still like 85 out of like 92 possible. So he's not like that good. So you really need to figure out what you got. And I think those would be some of the changes I would make on both sides is get some of these younger guys in there and see what they can do. Because right now, some of these veterans just aren't cutting it. And then you can't rely on Highsmith um, and Watt to do everything. You just can't. I mean, all they got to do is double cover them and hope that nobody else that the other guys don't make a play. So that's what my biggest thought is on some of the things I would do. I mean, I think Matt Canada again doesn't call the right plays. I heard today on the radio that on the 4th and 1, it was Mike Tomlin's call for that play. He wanted the pass play instead of the run play. Um, but I don't know that for sure. But this is what some people on the Pittsburgh radio were saying today. And if that's true, it's like, why would Again, you injured your quarterback and everything, and you're not even taking responsibility. But that's neither here nor there. I do think that they need to improve um, on what they're doing and how they're doing it, and I think they got to figure out something. I mean, go back to the old days and stick a fullback back there. See what happens. I mean, you got to try something because right now, what's working, what it is, isn't working. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of talk within the Steelers nation just calling for Matt Canada to get fired. At this point, I feel like it would be the most logical explanation on why the offense is doing so bad would be Matt Canada per se, but there's been a lot of call for it. Obviously, there's been also calls for just cleaning house. Would you necessarily clean house, or would you just kind of, wait it out and just see what happens? Because I mean, at this point, in my opinion, I think Matt Canada should be done by now. I mean, Mike Tomlin and defense coordinator, other positions, other coordinators should just maybe just wait a little bit before we clean house. But this offense coordinating is not working. I don't know what you think about that, but
I think they definitely should clean house with the offensive coordinator. But my thought is, I think what they need to do is go outside the organization. The Steelers, for whatever reason, always wants to bring in from within. We're gonna, promote within. Well, you know what? Sometimes promoting within doesn't always mean what you're going to get. You're not going to get the best offensive coordinator. There are some really good offensive coordinators out there that can work with young players. Bring them in, see what they can do. I mean, you had like we've had when Ben was young, we had, when he was a rookie, we had Bruce Arians who was really good with younger players. You can bring in an offensive coordinator that is good with young quarterbacks.
mhm.
Matt Canada might be a great offense coordinator somewhere. I doubt it, but I mean, he could be if he had maybe a veteran player or somebody that was middle of the road. Maybe he would do well, but I don't see it. But my point being is that you can get somebody that's a young player, like a coach that could work well with a young player, especially if you got somebody you want to make as your franchise quarterback. You should be going for his strengths, figuring out what his strengths are. I mean, that's what makes a good offense coordinator. Not just going, okay, these are my plays and you're going to run them. You got to figure out what's best for the players and make it best for everybody to run it. Um, and the same with the defense. I think they just need to figure out what they can do to make it better. I mean, if the defensive line isn't what it is, then some of our draft picks we got are really not doing what they were supposed to. So I don't know what you can do about that, but you have your players that you drafted in your second and third rounds that you should be coming up now because Cam Hayward is again in his 12th year. How much longer are you going to have him? So I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff they need to make some changes on. I'm just not sure what is the exact answer, but I think they need to start by just making some tweaks here and there and see what happens. So
All right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there was even a thing, and I'm not going to go into it too much because it was seen on the Pat McAfee show. They talked about it on there. So if you guys want to go watch it and look at the list about Mike Tomlin, it was only posted a couple of hours ago as of this recording. So, and it just talks about from what Mike Tomlin has done from 2007 until 2020. And it's really not that pretty. I don't know if it's necessarily Mike Tomlin's fault, but it could be. In this case, I still will blame Matt Canada for this. And then from there on, if this next offensive coordinator that we potentially get isn't getting the offensive numbers, then maybe it is Tomlin's problem or maybe it's a Kenny Pickett problem. But I feel like first things first is just working on getting a new offensive coordinator, which we probably won't see this season unless the offense continues to put up 3 and 6 points for the next 3 weeks. So, which is possible. I mean, if we only put up 6 against Houston, I mean, I guess anything's possible. But when it comes to teams only putting up field goal numbers, let's talk about some of these other AFC teams that played this week. First, we're going to start with the Cincinnati Bengals, who
yeah,
lost
what's going
20.
on with them?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Josh is going to dislike this because I
Yeah,
know
but
Josh is going to be listening to this from home. But yeah, they lost 27-3. Joe Burrow, once again, looks like he did not throw a touchdown, which
Mm.
ranks him probably one of the lowest quarterbacks, which is surprising after such a big contract was signed. And they lost 27-3. It was at Tennessee, and yeah, it just did not look like a good game. What is? Do you have any analysis on how the Bengals are looking? Or they
I was
just? I'm guessing they're not impressing you because they're not impressing
No,
me.
they're not impressing me. I was watching a little bit of some of the highlights and stuff, and I mean their secondary is really bad. I mean, I would have to say that I think that probably even though our secondary is bad, I think Cincinnati probably has a worse secondary than we have. Um, I know it probably isn't statistical that way, but it does look pretty bad over there watching them. The other thing I'll say is I know that Joe Burrow is not might not be playing because he's like is playing through injury, but I mean his passes are just not getting there. It looks like the teams are double covering the two outside receivers, and you would think Tyler Boyd would be open every time, and the ball's never getting there because the line either the offensive line is giving up people trying to get in there and he has to throw it away. He can't run, which was always a great thing of Joe Burrow because if he could run the ball for 10 yards, then all of a sudden that changes the whole dynamic. But he's stuck in the pocket and changes how teams are going to go after him. It's the same way as if you have Lamar Jackson with a bad leg. He's not going to be as good of a quarterback if he can't run 25 yards down the field. And I see that a lot with Joe Burrow. So I do think that a lot of the stuff that they're having is because of the injury. But how long can you wait? I mean they got to play Arizona, which Arizona is they should be able to beat, but that's not a guaranteed thing because they're going to go into Phoenix. They're going all the way into Phoenix, and as we know, or Glendale, but as we know, Arizona is definitely playing better football. They beat Dallas. They played competitive against San Francisco. So I'm not going to say that they're going to come in there and it's going to be an easy win for them. So I mean, they could pull it out, but I don't know. I don't know unless Joe Burrow changes something. Now I did read that they said that there's no way that they're going to bench Joe Burrow. They're going to just let him play through it. Which okay, I can understand that, but you're taking a chance of playing with an injured quarterback. You got to take your losses. You may end up being 1-7 or 2-9 before you even get a chance to start before he starts playing really well. And at that point, are you going to be able to get enough wins to come back? So that's what you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting over in Cincinnati right now. I mean, definitely not looking too good on their end. Obviously, with the injuries that we will be mentioning as well in more in-depth analysis, more or less. T. Higgins also went out with a rib injury, so that's not also really good for the Bengals either because T. Higgins is a noted wide receiver two over in that Cincinnati offense, and without him, you have Tyler Boyd moving up to wide receiver two and I forget who is supposed to be wide receiver three. Josh is going to smack me, but I'm sorry, I don't know Bengals. Josh, you can yell at me, but they will be moving a wide receiver three up, and from there we'll see how they do over these next couple of weeks. But like you said, Arizona's competitive. I mean, it was like 20, like you said earlier when we were talking, it was like 20-16. I think you said at half.
Yep.
So
No,
it
it was the
wasn't like it
third quarter.
was.
It was at the end of the third quarter. It was 20-16, and then uh, San Francisco scored two touchdowns in the fourth quarter, which were 15 points. It got a 2-point conversion and another touchdown, so it was 15 points to make it 35 to 16. But it was competitive going into the third quarter.
Yeah, and I mean, and honestly, I mean, I feel like Arizona has gotten, the small end of the stick here. They haven't been able to win some of these, closer games. They lost to the Giants like 31-28 a few weeks back. They've had some really tight games, but I mean, they're not that bad of a team. So for the Bengals to have to go up against them, you would think it's a win, but the way that Cincinnati has been playing, honestly, I don't even know if that would be a guarantee win. And
I
from
don't
what I know, from what I've seen in the AFC North, I don't think any team in the AFC North has a guaranteed win.
know.
I mean, like just going forward. I mean, I think the teams are all decent, but I do think that there are some issues on each team and a lot of injuries and a lot of issues. And and also, well, I was gonna actually mention Baltimore. Baltimore and Cleveland also played, and Baltimore, I believe, won very similar score. I believe it was 28-3. So
Yes.
almost 1 point more than Tennessee beating Cleveland. Um, Dorian Thompson Robinson went in. Me and Josh are very high on that guy. He didn't look too great, but the one interception he did have, I believe, was it like bounced off one of the players or something weird happened. DTR threw an interception. I don't think he looked horrible, but he definitely didn't look ready. And, without Watson, they only put up three. The defense couldn't really do a whole lot. You know, do you think that Cleveland is overrated? A lot of people went in the season with high hopes for Cleveland. Do you think Baltimore is legit? Do you think that they're phony? Because I think the Cowboys are phony. Sorry, Cowboys fans, but I think Cowboys are phony. But I think they're a little phony, and sometimes I wonder if Baltimore's a little phony. But I mean, it's a little too early on. What do you think of this? I mean, that game. I don't know how much you watched that, but that's go figure. Now you have like 12. You have three teams that put up a total of 12 points in the AFC North this week. You had the
Yes.
Steelers putting up
Exactly.
6. You had the Bengals putting up 3, and then you had the Browns putting up 3, and Baltimore putting up probably the most because of
Well,
28 points. So
well, I think the Browns are I think their defense is much improved. I think they got a much better defensive coordinator, and I believe is it Schwartz they signed. I think he's a well known defensive coordinator that is going to do really well for them. Um, I think also, with that being said, I also think that their offense is a struggling part of it. I don't see them being this juggernaut. I mean, I would say if you had to tell me which one had the best offense, I'd say Baltimore probably has the best offense just because of the way they're putting up points and how they're running the ball and the way they're moving. Um, but that doesn't mean that I think Baltimore has this elite offense. I really don't. I think that they have an okay offense, and I think that you got to worry about Lamar Jackson all the time because he can get injured at any point. You brought it up on I think one of the last episodes where you said that Anthony Richardson is like Lamar Jackson. He keeps running the ball, and when you run the ball all the time, you're going to end up getting hurt, and that's ends up what ends up happening. He's been out the last 2 seasons. He hasn't been able to finish. He starts off hot and then gets injured in the end. I mean, that's kind of rough. So you hope that you can get through it. But I mean, I don't think that they're a dominant team. I don't think their defense is really good. They're having a lot of secondary injuries. Like their secondary has gotten some injuries again this year. Um, they got a really good safety back there, but I mean, you can't rely on just a safety to be really good back there. So um, I think they're a okay team. I think their defense is okay. I think their offense is okay, but they could end up being the best team in the AFC North right now because the other teams really don't have any offense at all. I mean,
yeah,
if you
I
look at the
mean,
other teams, none of them have really good offenses. I mean, so Cleveland doesn't have one, Pittsburgh doesn't have one, and Cincinnati doesn't have one right now. Not to say that any one of them couldn't get hot. Just right now, I don't see any of them being more dominant enough to win the division over Baltimore. But does that mean that this week that Baltimore comes into Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh could end up winning it? Yeah, it could happen because you know Lamar Jackson struggles in Pittsburgh. So for whatever reason, he could end up losing the game, and we could end up being 3-2 and tied for first. But I mean, overall, you have to look at all the teams have to play all the same teams. So you just have to hope that you win some more than the other team. But I just don't see. I think Baltimore is going to end up winning the division by default. And I hate
mhm.
to say it, but that's what I think. Um, but I do think that probably the best defense out of our division right now is probably Cleveland. The second best is Pittsburgh, and then I would say Baltimore, and I'd say Cincinnati probably has the worst defense out of the four division teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting because I feel like at this point in time, as you kind of alluded to, I mean, I feel like it's just pretty much a toss up. I mean, there's really no one guaranteed to win the division this year, and I hate to say it for Bengals fans, but even if they do get hot at this very moment or in the next couple of weeks, it is going to be a long road back up from where they're at in the standings. I mean, 1-3 isn't the worst to come back from, but you already got those three losses, and you don't want to lose like four more because then you're looking at 7 losses, and that's 10-7. I mean, maybe Cincinnati could sneak in as a wild card at this point in time, but it might be a little tougher for them to climb back up. Very possible, but
Well,
we'll see. We'll see a lot going into next week. Did you do you have
well,
something else?
Cincinnati. Well, real quick with Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati still has to play all the top teams because they were the top team last year. So they got to play the Buffaloes. They got to go play Kansas City. And then
Mm-hmm.
they're going to still have to play the. They still have to play San Francisco, and they'll have to play Seattle. So I mean, they still have to play the teams out there in the West that are there, and then they'll end up probably playing at one point. They'll end up playing Minnesota, but I mean, Minnesota's struggling as well. But they're going to end up playing some of the topper, some of the more elite teams that they're going to have to get through as well. Which is going to be tough for them too. So, I mean, that's something too to consider is that you still have those games still out there. So that could easily be 3 wins or 3 losses. But if you lose all three of those games, now you're all of a sudden you're 1-6, and then you add a couple more here or there. You better hope that you don't lose to like Pittsburgh somewhere along the way, or lose to Baltimore again, or lose to Cleveland again. Because if you lose all your division games, or if you even go 1-5 in your division, it's hard to win that division. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because any tiebreaker you lose. So,
Yeah, because I mean, the Bengals also still have to play the 49ers at some point. I think it's Halloween weekend, October 29th, which is the day that we play the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, like you said, they still have to play Buffalo. There's a lot of teams that they still have to play, and yeah, they're not looking too good right now. But as of right now, I guess the AFC North is very up for grab. And I'm
yep.
in my squeaky chair, so if anybody can hear that, it's just my chair. I promise it is not my microphone. But we're gonna move past the AFC North. I feel like at this point in time, it is very early on in the season. Anything can happen. Next thing you know, freaking Cleveland wins the division. I'm not saying that'll happen, and I don't wish for that to happen because I don't really support the Cleveland Browns, but that comes
No,
from a
I don't
Pittsburgh
either.
Steelers fan. Nonetheless, moving on, let's talk about some other games. So on Thursday Night Football, the Lions beat the Packers, and I know that Alvarado is going to talk about this a lot more in depth. He's super excited because he's a first year Lions fan. So we call him the rookie. Super passionate, super excited about watching this Lions team. But is there anything special you wanted to see? You wanted to say? Because, like, I know when it came to Jordan Love, he didn't do awful, but definitely didn't impress as much. And it almost felt like that team didn't show up like you
I was gonna
may have
say,
mentioned.
yeah. I said he didn't even show up. I mean, it was 28-3 before they even scored any points.
Yeah.
They didn't look. Green Bay didn't look good at all. I mean, I don't know what we're missing. I mean, Green Bay is another team that, like the Steelers, they don't seem to want to start off real good. The New Orleans game, they were shut out in the first half, and then they come back and score 18 points in the second half. Again, New Orleans is not an elite team, so you doing that against a team like that, I can see it. But Detroit's a good team. You're not going to be able to do that against these teams. And not that I expect Green Bay to be like a Super Bowl contender, but I would expect them to be somewhat competitive. I mean, they have a lot of weapons there too. So the question you have to ask yourself is it because of the quarterback, or is it because of the play calling, or is it just because of, everything in general just not working right? Um, I know they have a lot of injuries on the offensive line. I read an article where they have two offensive linemen that they feel that is so bad that they're ready to pick up somebody off the street, a guard and a tackle that they have because they're playing. They're looking for just somebody that somebody caught to pick up because they think they got to be better than what they have. That's not real good if you have that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about our tackles, but I mean they also have offensive line trouble. So. Um, I don't know. I think that there's a lot to say. It looks like they don't even show up. It looks like they sometimes don't have the passion. The one, I mean, he was throwing long bombs to start the game. He had like 2 out of his first 6 plays were long bombs, and they were incomplete. I mean, yeah, you can score touchdowns quickly, but you don't make a living off of just throwing long bombs. I mean, you could try, but a lot of times in the NFL, it doesn't always connect. So I don't know. I thought it was very kind of a poor play on Green Bay side. I just didn't think they played well, and I don't know. Hopefully they can get it together. I mean, they have a longer week because they had a Thursday night game. Um, I'm not sure who they play this week, but I know that they have they got to be playing better than what they were playing against Detroit. And I think Detroit's an elite team, but I just don't know. I don't know if what else they're going to be able to do over there. So
Yeah, the Packers play Monday night against the Raiders. They play at Raiders, who they're still dealing with that Jimmy G injury. and they also are coming off of a loss, which actually wasn't that bad of a loss, but we'll get into that in a minute. We're just kind of going down the list here of games. Um, so a game that I kind of don't really want to discuss because me and you talked about not discussing it. Falcons and Jaguars. Jaguars won 23-7. Really nothing super exciting about that game in my opinion. It was in
Hey,
London. I feel
the
like that's probably the most exciting part.
hey, the only thing I want to bring up is I did watch the Toy Story part of it, which was kind of weird.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I didn't know how
They
you
had some
felt
sort
about
of
that. I definitely,
it was kind of weird, but I mean, other than that, it was. I don't know why they did it, but I thought I would at least check it out. But it was kind of weird. So
yeah, I definitely wasn't a big fan of how the animated characters were. I think it was a neat experience in theory, but I think it could have been executed just a little differently. The players
yes,
just made me feel a little uncomfortable, but nonetheless, Rams, Rams and Colts. Rams beat the Colts 29-23 in overtime. It was a good game. I think going into overtime. Is anything special you wanted to mention about that game? I mean, I think it shows both teams are pretty competitive. It shows that this is like second time the Rams have like had an overtime game, and
game.
going
Yes,
back with it. With the Rams, I think that they could be a really legit team, and they're doing pretty well considering they don't have Cooper Cup. And I think Indianapolis is surprising a little bit here as well, with Anthony Richardson and with, all of the different, you know, scheme changes and stuff compared to last year. I don't know how you feel about this game, but anything
yeah.
specific you wanted
I
to
thought that
mention?
no, I thought Indianapolis is playing very competitive. I think the team that they struggled the most on this year was I think Jacksonville. They don't think they did real well against Jacksonville. I think was a team. There was one team I don't remember who it was, but there was one team they struggled. They didn't do real well against. But every other game they've been in competition with. Um, I mean, Houston. They were in They played them. They beat them. They were able to beat Baltimore, and now they almost they went into overtime against the Rams. So I mean, they're playing some good. They're playing teams and they're being competitive. Um, so some of these teams I think that were bad last year may not be as bad, and some of the teams that were a little bit better last year I think are looking a lot worse. So um, I do want to say that probably in the NFC West we're probably going to have the two one of the two teams there are going to be the worst in the NFL. Either it's going to be the Raiders or not in the NFL but in the AFC is either going to be the Raiders or the Broncos. I think
Yeah,
I think the only
because
yeah the Raiders the only one Raiders were able to win against was the
Denver.
Broncos, and the Broncos, and that was because they were at home. So what happens when they go to Denver?
Yeah,
So I don't
yeah,
know.
and that wasn't even
Yeah,
that big of a win. Yeah,
no, it was
it wasn't even that.
17-16. It wasn't like it was like a 20-point win or anything. So I look at the other AFC teams and I say, most of them are going to be pretty competitive this year. Everybody was looking at Houston as going to be a team that are going to be, people are going to walk over. Well, they beat Jacksonville, now they just beat Pittsburgh. So they might start making some noise here if CJ Stroud can start getting the ball down, start feeling confident, and their defense is starting to get together. I mean, they could end up being a team that maybe not can't do good, but if they go 6-11, I mean that's much of an improvement. Or 7-9, that's an improvement over what is 7-10,
7-10,
seven to
yeah, the
ten.
extra
Yeah,
game now, yeah.
seven and
It's
ten.
it's
I mean,
it's
if they
I'm still not used to it.
yeah, I do that sometimes. But 7-10, even if they go 7-10, that's still going to be it's still a much improved over what they went last year. So I think a lot of these teams over there are improving, and you can see it by their skill level. Um, but there has to be teams that falter. So every year you're going to see that. So it's just who can win enough games. So, but I do think Indianapolis is doing pretty well, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think both of those teams, like they played it out well. I think, the Colts, definitely look promising. I kind of am eating my words when it comes to Anthony Richardson going forward. Always hoping for the best for him. I'm kind of glad that he's proven me wrong. So, I mean, maybe he ends up being that guy, but nonetheless, two really good teams going at it, going into overtime. Rams picking up the big victory. We had the Vikings and Panthers. I don't really want to talk about that one too much. Nothing
No,
super eventful.
no.
Super awesome that the Vikings won 21-13.
The only thing I'm going to say is that was a great block on the they had a block on Kirk Cousins.
Oh
Did
yeah,
you,
yeah,
you
that,
did you,
yeah, that was a
on
good
the
block. Yeah,
interception or and the interception return? That was about
yeah,
the greatest play there, but
yeah. Everything else, it just felt very, lackluster. Nothing really crazy to report. I mean, I don't know how you felt about the Buccaneers and Saints game. I feel like that was another one that really wasn't that impressive. I mean, the Buccaneers are surprising this year, but I feel like the Saints. It's not really a shocking win. I mean, obviously you still got like the division, but like it's like a divisional game, but still.
well, I think the Buccaneers are probably the best team in that division. I don't think
Yeah.
I think New Orleans. I think New Orleans has some offensive skill, but again, I don't think Carr is the answer to take them anywhere special. Um, but I mean, if you look at that division, you have Carolina, Atlanta, um, and then you look at Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to probably end up winning that division again, even with Baker Mayfield. But I do think that they're probably the best. Probably the best. They're probably the best team in that division. I don't think Baker Mayfield is like a great quarterback, but he can give you some wins. And
Hmm.
I think that's what you're getting in Tampa. Um, but I don't know. I think it again. That's a pretty okay game, I guess.
Yeah.
So
And then we're gonna there's two games that I know you specifically wanted to talk about, but we're just gonna kind of skim over some of the other games real quick. Chargers Raiders, that was a 24-17 win for the Chargers. Um, you know, cool. I mean, we're happy for the Chargers. Kind of crazy that the Raiders
Garoppolo
actually kind of kept it close, without
Garoppolo was
Garoppolo in.
injured. Yeah,
Pretty
Garoppolo
impressive
was
for
injured. Yep.
the Raiders. Yeah. So and Garoppolo being hurt, I think was pretty crazy. And then obviously Herbert, which we'll talk about too. He went in with a cast, or at least he had a cast on. I don't know if he went in and played or not. I didn't watch the game, but I do know that he was in a cast after suffering a hand injury, but the Chargers did pull that one out, which is pretty good considering they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. Mike Williams is out for the rest of the season. Austin Eckler's been dealing with his injury as well. He's been out since week one. So there's been a lot of injuries on the Chargers that, are very, very harmful. But hey, you know what? Good for the Chargers for picking up that win. We kind of talked a little bit about the Cardinals and 49ers. Um, I mean, once again, 49ers stay hot. They're
Yep.
obviously still Super Bowl favorites. A little bit of promise from the Cardinals, keeping it kind of close at the beginning, and then 49ers running away with it. Obviously, they were in San Francisco, so might have had something to do with it too. Then also another game I don't really want to talk about, 38-3 Cowboys beating the Patriots. Once again, I don't like either of these teams, and it has nothing to do with me not wanting to discuss them. I just don't think it was that eventful of a game to discuss. I don't think the Patriots look that good at all, and obviously the Cowboys, for me, although have a very, very good defense, sometimes they just kind of randomly will just forget how to play defense. And it didn't happen this week. They did play really great defense, but last week, against Arizona, they just kind of forgot how to play. So,
Yep.
you know, very big win for them, but we'll see how the rest of it goes. Um, and then the two games that I know you wanted to talk about a lot. So we're going to start with Broncos and Bears. So Broncos came back after being
I
down, what was
know.
it, 28-7
28
maybe?
7 or 20. Yeah, it was something like that. It was like they were like
Yeah.
three touchdowns down, and they came back. And I did it go to overtime or did they win it outright? I can't
I,
remember.
they won it outright, it looked. Yeah,
Yeah,
they won it right. They won 31-28. So it would
yeah.
have
So
been.
yeah, yeah. So I think it was 28. I think it was 28-7 at
Mhm.
one point, because we were saying, oh yeah, look, Chicago's going to get their first win since. What would you tell me?
Oh yeah, so fun fact to anybody out there listening, Elon Musk bought Twitter last year, and the Bears have not won a game since Elon Musk has bought Twitter, which was posted all over social media, and the Bears have still
exactly.
not won a game since Elon
See,
Musk has bought Twitter. Well, now it's X, but at the time it was
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah, but it
So,
was
but
Twitter.
yeah,
But still,
but
so
continue. Yeah, we were talking
yeah,
about
but
that.
still, but again, they were up 28-7, and then they didn't score another point, and they scored Denver scored 24 points, made it 31-28, and my thought is, I know these two are really like crummy teams, but I mean, come on. I mean, they both have
Yeah.
terrible defenses. I mean, they really do. But I don't think either team is one is better than the other. I think they were both. You could have flipped a coin on that one and see what happened. So
I do think it was really kind of surprising because, when it comes to Russell Wilson, he has not been playing to his utmost potential since leaving Seattle.
no.
Did not have a good season last year. This was probably one of maybe his best performance in Denver that I have seen since he has joined Denver last season. Granted,
Well,
I didn't
he
watch a
he had
lot of the
a,
Broncos games,
he
but
had a good game against Washington this year too, because he
oh yeah,
scored like
you're
30.
right.
He,
Yeah,
he had
yeah.
35 points or something against them, but couldn't go in and pull it out. But again, um, I mean, he's playing better, but I still don't see. I think Denver doesn't have a defense. I mean, I think Denver's struggle right now is defense, and they can't stop anybody. I mean, you can't give up 70 points on a team and against Miami. I don't care who you are. You just can't do that. So that has to tell you how bad their defense really is. Um, so
But well, and you mentioned Miami. Well, let's flip over to Miami then. So obviously, as we had mentioned, Denver won 31-28, big comeback win for the Broncos. The Bears still remain winless in the NFL going into Week 5, but a team that we thought was going to stay hot ended up being silenced just a little bit
yes.
by a division rival, the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins. Final score ended up being none other than 48-20. Not a very good look for the Miami Dolphins
Well,
after blowing out Denver. What do you got to say?
how good is Buffalo all of a sudden? I mean, had 3 games in a row where they're over 30 points in their last wins. They had 48. They had, I believe, 31 and 38 in their last 3 wins. They're scoring over 30 points a game. They played it against Miami. They were against Washington. Again, I mean, I know some of these teams aren't like elite teams, but I mean, you still have to score points against them. So
Mm-hmm.
I know they lost to the Jets week 1, but right now they're looking like probably the best team in the AFC. I mean, I can't say that Kansas City looked like a dominant team. I know we were going to talk a little bit about Sunday night, but they didn't look like a dominant team at all. You know, so far this year, I think the only team they looked really dominant against was Chicago. So other than that, I mean, in their first 4 games, yeah, they're 3-1, and they might be better as it goes on. But right now, I don't see them, you know, blowing out teams or doing anything. I think they're struggling on wide receivers. Their wide receivers are not doing well at all in Kansas City. I mean, we could talk about that, but with Buffalo, I just think Buffalo's got everything together. I think um, right now they're playing well. Their defense is playing well. They're making timely turnovers, um, and I think they had a great game plan against Miami. Um, I think Buffalo and Miami has played for many years, and Buffalo and Miami. I think it always goes down to one of the other which team is going to have the better year that year. So I just think right now, I think even though Miami might be able to beat everyone else until you can beat Buffalo, I think you're gonna have a tough time winning that division. So, um, and it was
Yeah.
last year too. I mean, they were able to beat them in Miami, but they weren't able to beat them in Buffalo late in the season. So, um, we'll see what happens. But that's just my thought. That's what I think is going on with Buffalo there now. So,
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a toss up, when it comes to the Buffalo Bills on my part, I really do like silently really love watching the Dolphins play. I've always kind of had a special place in my heart for the Miami Dolphins. Kind of a tough loss watching them win, but I'm a big Damar Hamlin fan just because he was a Pitt, so love seeing him play one of his first games back, in a very long time since suffering that crazy injury back in January of this past year. So it was great to see him back in that huge victory, but still a little sad to see the Miami Dolphins lose just because they do have a special place in my heart. However, when it comes to the Dolphins, I mean, like I said, it's hit or miss. We'll see how it goes. Buffalo, they might dominate this season, but I'm waiting to see what they do come playoffs because they've been the Super Bowl favorites for multiple years or multiple times, and they just always fall short. Maybe
yeah.
this will be the year that they just kind of finally get over that hump. Maybe they just stay healthy, they stay hot. Hope for the best because I feel bad for those Bills, man.
Well, they also
It
right now, like we said, Cincinnati's not playing up to their potential, and you also have you also don't have Kansas City playing up to their potential. So if you go in the AFC, who's really the most dominant team in the AFC right now? It would have to be Buffalo. I mean, and then you have Miami would be the first. I would put them as 1 and 2. I don't know who else I would put Baltimore maybe at 3. Right now.
yeah,
I mean, Kansas City, I guess, could be 3 as well. I mean, they're all into that type of situation there. I don't think that you're going to have Jacksonville or Tennessee or any of those teams out in the South coming on and taking over and going into the Super Bowl coming from that division. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just don't see any team out of there that is that dominant that's going to be able to do that. So, I mean, if I go with my AFC pick, if I had to say, I would probably say Buffalo looks like the most. Now, again, it's early in the season. Like you said, let's see what happens in week 10. If we have um, Josh Allen and Diggs and 3 or 4 players injured and they're on a backup quarterback, I could change everything on what's going on. So it all depends on what happens. But right now they do look like they're playing the best football, um, and we'll just see how it goes from there. But I do think Buffalo is looking pretty dominant out there. I mean, to stop a Miami team that just put 70 points up last week and then you put 48 on them. You just said, okay, here we'll put 48 on you, and then we'll give you a 20. So I don't know. I thought it was a very, very, very dominant performance by Buffalo, and it showed people that they're for real. So
yeah. So yeah, like I said, we'll see how the rest of their seasons go over in that division as well. Could be anybody's game. We'll see what happens with Buffalo if they stay hot. We'll see if Miami, picks themselves up, dust themselves off, and move forward, or if they just kind of crumble into nothingness. We'll see
yep.
everything that happens. But a game that I did kind of miss. I don't know if you have anything like special that you wanted to mention with the Commanders and Eagles. That game also went into overtime with a 34-31 win. Then we're going to move into the Chiefs game briefly,
Yeah,
talk about some
again,
injuries, and then
the Commander and Eagles. I mean, again, it shows to me that how good are the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles were very dominant last year. They were beating teams by 14 points. There wasn't a lot of these overtime games. I mean, they had a few here or there, but they were against good teams. So I just don't know if the Eagles are as good as they were last year. Um, I mean, there's 4-0, but you can be 4-0, and it all depends on who you beat and how you beat them. So I don't know. I don't think the Eagles are as dominant as they were last year. Um, but again, they could get hot too because they have the tools. We'll just have to wait and see. But right now, I don't see them being that hot of a team. So
yeah, I mean, obviously the 49ers still the favorite over in the NFC. I
yep,
think they're probably the team that you kind of once again alluded to, basically that dominant 4-0 team where they're just winning by 2 touchdowns a game. I mean, I think the
exactly.
49ers are just the symbol of that for the NFC. Eagles, not so much this season. Like you said, we'll see how it goes. But, you mentioned the Chiefs Jets game. Chiefs pulled out a squeak of a victory, and I'm
Yeah,
sure Stan's going to have a lot of discussion about this later in this week. But you were talking about the Chiefs wide receivers. There were some missed calls there. There was a lot that had occurred during that game. What do you think of the Chiefs in general? Also, what do you think of Zach Wilson? Do you think that this was like his peak performance? Do you think this is going to continue, or do you think that it's just going to go downhill from here for
again,
you?
I think with Zach Wilson, I think what you're going to get is it all depends on he's going to be like a Kenny Pickett. It depends on the secondary he's got. And again, I don't think Kansas City has a great secondary, but I think they have an okay secondary. Um, so I think he was able to get some passes. He struggles whenever you get a really good team like Dallas. You have a secondary that's pretty good back there. He struggles, and I think that's what you see right now. I think going back with Kansas City, again, Kansas City is just not the team. Their wide receivers are not good. I mean, you have Sky Moore, who you thought was going to be one of your stars. You don't even see him in some games. I mean, some games he doesn't even have a catch. I mean, if you have your star wide receiver not getting a catch, you're trying to get it to Tony. Tony has 2 catches. I mean, these are supposed to be your stars. Um, you can't throw every single ball to Kelsey. I mean, you can try, but I mean, eventually you can put 4 people on Kelsey and hope that the wide receivers catch the ball. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see. I mean, the running backs are really good. I think they have um, Pacheco, and they have what's the other one that they have? That is it Edwards, or I can't
Oh,
think what
what,
the
Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Clyde. Yeah, Alaire. Yeah, that's so they have 2 really good running backs there. So they do have some pretty good running backs. They just don't have. They have their wide receivers are really not that good. And I mean, I don't know if I don't care how great of a quarterback you have. If you don't have wide receivers that can catch the ball, you're going to be in trouble. And I think that's what's going on with Kansas City. They're squeaking by on some of these wins, but again, Sky Moore, Tony, um, I think that the Valdez is probably the best one. Um, he's probably their best wide receiver right now, but he's supposed to be their third wide receiver. He's not even supposed to be their top. Um, I think when they lost Juju Smith Schuster, though I don't think he's a star, but he was a much better wide receiver, number one for them than what they have here. So I don't know. I see a lot of issues that I don't think they were even thought were going on with them. So
Yeah. So I mean, and that, you know, when it comes to the Chiefs though and the Jets, do you think ask Connor about this too. You think Taylor Swift's any good luck over there for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's kind of. I think it's kind of. I think they shouldn't be showing her every single commercial. Every time a Kansas City person scores, do we show a picture of Taylor Swift?
Yeah, it,
So
it
I,
was
you
weird for
know,
me because they showed, I think Pacheco ran it in for a touchdown and then they showed Taylor Swift, but like Taylor Swift has no connection to Pacheco at all. Like it would make sense if Kelsey would have like scored that
yeah, I
touchdown
agree.
because they like in for sports in general, like whenever like a player scores a touchdown and then their family's in the stands, they'll show their family. But I feel like showing Taylor Swift on an Isaiah Pacheco, touchdown was just kind of random. So, but that's just me. But
Well, they were showing it on a throw, like if Kelsey made a catch, like a first down catch. Okay, let's show Taylor Swift. It's a catch. That's what he gets paid to do. What are you
yeah,
going to
it's
do? Show him when he blocks a player and say, "Hey, okay, look, Kelsey blocked this guy. Let's go over and see what Taylor Swift is doing."
yeah.
I don't know. I think they're trying to bring up ratings, and I don't know. I don't think it's what you should be doing. But I mean, if that's what they think is going to work, it's fine. But I think it's kind of I think it isn't what the football fans want to see. I don't think they really want to see Taylor Swift every time that we see a catch or a touchdown for Kansas City. So
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, we'll see if Taylor Swift shows up for the Week 5 Kansas City game. She's shown up the last 2 weeks. We'll see if they continue their 2-0 streak that the NFL was preaching about all over social media. Now, let's
exactly.
get into some injuries before we wrap it up here today.
Yep.
We mentioned Kenny Pickett. He's out with a suffered knee bruised knee. Is
Yes,
that what
that's
it?
what they said. A bruised
Bone
knee.
bruise.
Yeah, it's a deep new, but they're going to try to see if he can practice this week.
Hmm.
So they'll see what happens. If he can practice, they're going to try to get him to play, but he has to be able to be mobile enough. With that offensive line, you need somebody to be mobile because if he can't move, he's going to be a sitting duck back there. Um, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, he has to be able to move a little bit with that knee. So they're hoping it improves as the week goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll play on Sunday. I think it is going to be Mitchell Trubisky starting, and then I think they're just going to hold him out for this week. And then since we're on the bye next week, I don't think he's going to play until we come back to verse at LA, which is the same thing with Pat Fryermuth, who is also hurt at this very moment. Pat Fryermuth went down with a hamstring injury and did not return. And it says he is expected to miss 2 to 3 weeks, which would put him in the time frame of coming back after the bye, like Kenny Pickett would probably be, or the game following that.
Yes.
So that's where Pat Fryermuth is. But I'm not too worried about that. We got Darnell Washington, so I think he's going to be a good breakout player that you may want to pick up in fantasy. I like to mention. Um, and then we've got Justin Herbert, Justin Herbert. Oh my goodness! It took me like three times to say that. He injured his left non-throwing hand after throwing an interception against the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday. He had a fractured finger, and it apparently was a gruesome nail injury or something.
Ugh.
Um, but luckily, LA has the Week 5 bye this coming week, so hopefully he'll be back for next week. After the bye, Matt Stafford, he went down with a good deep bruise on his hip, but he's not expected to miss much time, if any time at all. So when it comes to the Rams going into this week, it's probably not going to be too much of a worry, but Matt Stafford just might not be as. I mean, he's not much of a mobile quarterback, but you just got to
No.
make sure he doesn't land on it wrong and re
Yeah.
injure himself. So, and then Javonte Williams, running back for the Denver Broncos, he left with a hip injury and did not return. Sean Payton would not comment on his injury and said it looks like it is believed to be a hip flexor and is not expected to miss much, if any, time, but he did not want to comment on it. So, but when it comes to T. Higgins, that is an injury where it is a rib injury, and it looks like it's going to be a fracture, and it's unclear of how long he will be out for, but it could keep him off the field until week 7, which will see Tyler Boyd and Trenton Irwin or Andrea Izovius. And the reason I'm going over this, guys, and all these injuries is because there were so many this past week. So usually I don't always cover all these injuries, but geez Louise, there were so many. Mike Evans was also hurt. He, scored a touchdown in the Buccaneers game and then looked to develop solid connection with Baker. I'm reading this from Pro Football Network, but basically he suffered a hamstring in week 4, did not return either. His issue could be minor, but once again, Bucks will be on the bye, so it's not too much to worry about. Devontae Adams looks like he had a shoulder injury in that Raiders loss to the Chargers, and Adams said he definitely does not feel good right now. So we'll see how that plays out. We mentioned Pat Freiermuth. Jawan Johnson got hurt during practice, or warm-ups, I should say, and they didn't offer an update on his status. Offensive tackle for the Dolphins. He's going to miss time. He's going to miss probably a few. It says will be measured in weeks, not days. There's just a lot of injuries. I feel like there were some edges and some cornerbacks, and just there's a lot. And I think even rookie Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from New England Patriots, also went down with a shoulder injury and did not return. He dislocated his shoulder and is expected to miss time.
Geno
So
Smith was injured too in the Monday night game. He didn't return, but they said luckily they have the bye, so he should be ready because it was like a slight sprain on the knee, I believe it is. So he was out.
yeah,
So he was another one that went out too. So
Yeah, and that's just insane. I mean, go figure. Look at all of these injuries that happened just in one week. I mean, when it comes to the NFL flipping upside down for just after 1 week. Well, this was the week because oh my goodness, this was the week because how about that voice crack?
yeah, I heard
Um,
it.
yeah, how about that voice crack? After that crazy week, just flip the NFL upside down. So I mean, when it comes to the NFL, it's very unpredictable, and usually I don't always go through all the injuries, and I know me and Josh usually don't, but I feel like this week there was a lot of notable players that did get hurt. So I feel as if it was worth mentioning almost every single one of them, except a couple of like some players that I may have missed that weren't on Pro Football Network. So with that said, do you have anything else you would like to add in here before
Nope,
we sign off here?
nope. I think that should be it.
All right. Well, with that said, I'm going to try to attempt to do Josh's spiel here, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed, please remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube at No Butts Show. Our social media pages are NoButts_show on Instagram and NoButtsShow on TikTok, which TikTok is still empty, so you might be one of the first followers there. Not my Twitter, but Josh's Twitter is Josh_Butts_2001. And if you would like to reach us, you can email us at bullmoosepodcast2@gmail.com. That is the number 2 gmail.com. Finally, our spread shop will be in the description below, so check out our merch. And when Josh is finally healthy again, he will be cooking up some new merch for you guys too. So if you want to go check it out, please go and support us. We'd love to see all the support all over the world. But once again, if you enjoyed today's show, please give us a like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, go do something nice for somebody else. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.